Garry, Manchester City have put on a display here which will presumably convince a few doubters that they're in it. They're in it.
Maybe a little bit too early for that. I think that this is not the Manchester City of 2-3 years ago when they were absolutely incredible. The levels aren't the same, even in this game where they won 3-0 and they were comfortable winners. But they have a world-class centre-forward and they have a world-class goalkeeper. And they have some good players in between, but it's not quite the Manchester City of a few years ago, but they were dominant today. They were dominant in the big moments as well, and they scored at the right times. They were deserved winners. I think a couple of the goals were really, really good, and they were far better than United.
Well, let's deal with the individuals then, because there were 2 or 3 standouts, as you've already implied. I mean, Haaland, there was a point when it was almost funny how often he was winning the ball in his own penalty area, never mind what he's actually paid to do. As an all-round performance from a centre-forward, that was a bit special, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, he's the best centre-forward in the world. I won't change my mind on that. Obviously, he sometimes doesn't get involved in the game enough. And actually said in the second half, I feel there are moments where... I actually watched Sergio Aguero here for a number of years. He was a completely different striker, but he was special, different level special Aguero. And I always thought, you could score 40 goals in the Premier League. You could score 45 goals in the Premier League. You're that good. And I always feel that about Haaland as well, and he does, and he scores so many goals. And I always think, you could do so much more. You could hold it up. You could ragdoll defenders. You could chase things down. You could defend it in your own box. You could win headers. You could do everything because you're that good. You're that good a player. And today was that performance. He was absolutely brilliant. At the start of the second half, he cleared about 3 corners and second phase sort of balls that came into the box with his head, with his feet. I think he had 5 or 6 clearances, the most in the game. And he had more touches in his own defensive box at one point, than in the United box. But then when the big moments came, he took his goals brilliantly. The first goal that he scored was special all the way through. Nico O'Reilly's little nutmegs on Agati, then I think Phil Foden just popped it round the corner, Doku's little roll of Euro, and then a little pass down the side, which I think's amazing. That's where you sort of really want Haaland, where you're getting that little short pass. You know, it's difficult sometimes with the amount of players that play behind the ball against City to get it through in one for him, but where you can get it through to him is those little passes down the side, and he just holds offshore, and he's explosive. The explosion, off the mark of that first 3 or 4 yards and that sort of aggression in his run, and then to all of a sudden change that to the subtlety, the little dink. And they're just the best players, the ones that can use their strength, the physicality, and then also slow everything down in the heads up here and be cold and just little dink over. It was a brilliant, brilliant goal. And then the third one was a classic Haaland goal, you would say, from a few years ago, you know, whereby he's just gone through. It's a mistake from United. Shaw leaves Maguire a bit short. Maguire's pass is poor, and then he's through on goal. And you know that no one's catching him. Maguire's never going to get near him on sort of chasing back. And he's just one-on-one. And he just slots it into that far corner. It was a brilliant performance from Haaland today. And look, if City are going to win the league, I don't think they will. I don't think that's the best Manchester City team. And I don't think they're the best team in this league. I think that Arsenal and Liverpool are better currently. But what they do have, if somehow they can get Donnarumma, Diaz, Rodri and Haaland at the best, they have a world-class spine. They have a world-class spine there, and they have an unbelievable centre-forward who can destroy teams. But I just feel like still United, you know, weren't the team to do it today. But I think with Nico O'Reilly at left back, who thinks a big talent, Kusanov at right centre, at right back, there's just something not quite as dominant as you watch City for years. I've sat up here and been bored watching them. They were that good because they were just absolutely sublime in every area of the pitch. They wouldn't let you attack, not just because they had the ball most of the game, 70%, 65%, but as soon as they give it away, they'd all be all over you and win it back straight away. That's not this Manchester City team. When they give it away or when they're pressing from the front, they're not as dominant in that area of their game as they were a few years ago, and that'll mean that they will concede shots on the goal, but they've now got a shot stopper. Pep's gone and acted. He's then brought a shot stopper, and we saw the stats before the game of Donnarumma versus Ederson. I like Ederson as a goalkeeper as well. He's a brilliant goalkeeper. But I think what City have now is a brilliant goalkeeper who can maybe stop a lot of those shots that they're letting in on the goal, which will make them more competitive, obviously. But I think it's... Haaland was amazing today. He's a brilliant centre-forward.
Yeah, and you've covered Donnarumma there, whose save from Mbeumo, by the way, was beautiful, and we had a great view of it. The other one we were picking out in the game was obviously Phil Foden. And listen, any great player over the course of a long career is going to have dips and rises. But are you seduced into believing that he's showing us now he's ready to come again?
Well, I like Phil Foden for a start. I think he's a brilliant football player, and there are question marks over him. There are doubts. I do think that if you're a great player and a prolific title winner and you're someone who's going to play at the very top level for 15 years, you have dips. That's a guarantee. You look back through every player's in history that have been basically at one club, and they've had that moment where they thought, is it right? Should I leave? Have I lost my form? Have I lost my spark? All those things, injuries, obviously. But the important thing for Phil Foden today, for me, the most difficult part of any football match usually for a team that's going to go on and win is the first 30 minutes where there's real competitiveness, particularly in a derby. I thought he was brilliant in that part of the match. I mean, he's good all the way through the game, but in the most important part of the game where City were establishing their authority and control and obviously needed to get that first goal, I thought he was really good. So this wasn't a Phil Foden that starts the game today that's been not in the England squad, that's coming in and you're thinking to yourself, oh, he looks a bit jittery. He's played his way into the game and he's got better as it's gone on. He started the game really, really well. Thought his touch in the early parts, his positions in the sort of areas where Bruno Fernandes and Agati were trying to pick him and Reinders up were really clever. I thought some of his link play was fantastic. Opens up, it's easy for everybody to look comfortable. But no, I thought he was really good in the early parts of this match when actually it was most difficult for City to establish themselves. So it was a good day for Phil Foden. That he's always brilliant in derbies, but what he needs now is consistency and to stay fit and perform at that level. I saw Pep Guardiola at the end of the game. I don't know if you saw her on the walk around when they were obviously doing the lap of honour. Pep Guardiola had his arm round him, and even questions have been asked about that, haven't they, about whether Pep Guardiola and Phil Foden sort of not get on with each other, but whether he's having him or not. So that was, I think, a good moment as well for City fans to see at the end of the game.
Into the last 5 minutes of the game, I asked you the sort of burning question that you probably dread around Manchester United and what they take out of it. And I was asking you to give, and you did give a constructive answer, or tried to. Yeah. So let me ask you it again now you've had 10 minutes to think about it.
Look, I think if I start with the football side of things, I think United had moments in the games today, particularly in the first 20 minutes, where I thought they counter-attacked 3 or 4 times and they should have done better with it. And at the start of the second half, for the first few minutes, when Haaland was heading those corners out and those sort of deliveries into the box out, they looked promising, but they just weren't enough. And I said it was a bit of a nothing. There are certain things that I look at and I think the system is the system, and United fans will like it or they won't like it, but Amorim's not going to change. He's going to die in his own ditch if he's going to die in terms of losing his job. But it does mean there are challenges at times whereby to try and make, when you are chasing a game, he still plays that. So even at Grimsby away, you had Mason Mount at left wing back. Well, that's just not right. Today, I think he's always changing his back three. Always, it seems, in every single match. Euro comes off or someone else comes off, and then it doesn't seem to get any better. Changing the back three, I always think you need stability in your back line. And I say back three, changes the back five regularly as well. So the 2 wing backs and the back three. The goalkeeper is the goalkeeper. I don't think he did anything particularly wrong today, but I don't think he will be strong enough to be able to be a Manchester United goalkeeper, so that will come back and bite at some point. The midfield is a massive problem, and we've known that. United fans know that. Agati and Fernandes today, I think you mentioned it early, about an hour before the game, that Agati and Fernandes played in this fixture last year from start to finish, and United won the game. But Agati's not good enough. And Bruno's not a player who plays in a deep line midfield in a 2. Particularly, he can do, I think, if United are at home and they're playing against a team where they're dominating possession, you can maybe bring him a bit deeper and get away with it. But against any team that have got good possession, good players, and that's most teams in the Premier League, Bruno is always going to probably struggle in a midfield 2. And what happens is, it's a bit of a pattern that exists. You can cuddle Bruno with Ahmad and then Burmo and Sesko, and they sit in front of him and provide a shield. But what happens is when the game opens up a little bit, or the game players get a little bit more fatigued, or United go 1-0 down, they end up then sort of chasing it a little bit. The front three stay a little bit higher, and then those spaces start to appear in midfield. And then Bruno starts to get pulled around a little bit. And Bruno's United's best player by a mile. But this system either has to have him as a 1 of a 2 in midfield or 1 of a front 3, of which he's neither of these 2 positions. So you've got an issue there. It's a specialist system. Wing-back's a specialist position. Mazraoui didn't have a good game today. Shaw had his poorest game of the season by a mile. He was well off it. First 2 goals he was poor for, and the third goal he didn't cover himself in glory. It was just a nothing today for me. It was just poor. I'm not jumping up and down. I'm not screaming. I think I've gone past that. But Ruben Amorim is going to come under big pressure. He's going to come under big pressure. Manchester United are 14th in the league. Now, it's only a few games in. It's 4 games in. But next week, if Manchester United lose and they go to 15th and 16th, it's 5 games in. And before you know it, you're in October, and Manchester United are in the bottom half of the table, and that's where they couldn't be, having spent £200 million, having him had a pre-season. Yeah, they might be 7th, 8th, 9th. They could be in those types of positions, but they can't be in the bottom half of the table. So there's got to be a quick turnaround pretty quickly. And the manager's idea has got to land very quickly with the players. Now, I'm not saying here today, I don't think there's any suggestion, and I'm not suggesting that, the players have got down tools on him. They've not, but they're struggling a little bit. They're struggling. They're struggling against Burnley at home. I was at the match. They're struggling against Fulham away in large parts of the game. They're struggling at Grimsby. They struggled here today. They're struggling with it. They're struggling to find rhythm, to find tempo, to find performance levels. I was really heartened by the first game of the season against Arsenal. I thought it was a really good performance. But maybe that was just they'd had a good pre-season. They built this sort of the old sort of scar, the old wounds, the old scars are starting to open up. And I'm worried. I'm worried about the manager. I'm worried about what's going to happen in this next few weeks. I don't think it's a time for panic. But I've seen this before. We've seen this film, haven't we?
Quite often.
And
so what would you do, may I ask? Exactly, Chelsea next. Sorry to interrupt, but they have to carry on operating. And as we mentioned in the game, they haven't got that many games this year. They're out the League Cup. There's no Europe. So they've got from now until next weekend when they play Chelsea.
Yeah.
What would you, if it's not too facile a question, what would you be doing tomorrow and Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday? How can it be better next week?
Yeah, I wouldn't change my my preparation. I'd like to think he's going to be a serious professional, Ruben Amorim, and so are the players in terms of how they prepare. I won't change anything in that respect. But they've got to come out of the blocks next Saturday night against Chelsea, 5:30 kick-off. Atmosphere, it'll be fantastic at Old Trafford next Saturday night. It will be. For 10-15 minutes, the crowd will always be with the team, always be with their manager. And Chelsea play midweek in Europe, so United have got a free week to prepare for it, so they should have more energy, more legs. No, it's early in the season, so it's a small thing. But they should be in a position whereby they can really go for it, be really aggressive. And I think they have to, in that first 15-20 minutes next week, go and get a goal. I'm not saying that's going to be the be-all and end-all, but they have to start quickly. They have to get a goal. They can't go 1-0 down against Chelsea, and then all of a sudden Chelsea are passing it around, the crowd goes quiet, and before you know it, you're into a sort of spiral of another game. I think they have to be really lightning quick out of the blocks next Saturday night, because it's a really important match. Losing away from home from City is never going to cost you your job, because the reality of it is a lot of teams lose here. But when you start to lose games at home, they just beat Burnley in the last minute. It is going to start to put pressure on the manager, and you're going to see